She abandoned my disabled toddler in the woods over petunias. What this HOA president didn't know, I wasn't just another neighbor to intimidate. As I sprinted through the trees, my daughter's wheelchair glinting in the distance, I made two vows. Find Emma. Then make this woman regret ever touching my child. What followed would dismantle her petty kingdom and rewrite every rule she weaponized. This isn't just a Karen story. It's about how justice always rolls forward. Your daughter was breaking the rules by picking flowers, so I left her in the woods to teach her a lesson. As these words left the HOA president's mouth, she had no idea she just committed a crime against the child of the state's chief justice. She would soon learn that some lessons come at a devastating price. Before watching full Karen stories, comment below from where you're watching. Also like and subscribe for more Karen stories. Where is she? Where's my daughter? I screamed, voice echoing through the quiet neighborhood streets. My hands were shaking as I gripped my phone, ready to call the police. Calm down, Mr. Evans, Patricia Wilson said with an irritating smirk. Her perfectly styled blonde hair didn't move as she crossed her arms. I simply showed your daughter where children are actually allowed to play in this community. It's not my fault if she couldn't find her way back. I stepped closer, fury building inside me. My daughter is 3 years old and uses a wheelchair. What have you done with her? Patricia's eyes narrowed. That wheelchair was on community property without proper permits, and those unauthorized flowers she was picking are against HOA regulations. Rules are rules. You took a disabled child and left her somewhere because of flowers? My voice broke as panic surged through me. Several neighbors had come out of their homes, watching in shock. Your lawn isn't a daycare, Patricia sneered, blocking my path to Emma's empty wheelchair. I froze not at her words, but at the smear of mud on its armrest. My daughter's tiny hands always gripped there. Where is she? The words came out lethal, a tone I'd only used sentencing murderers. Neighbors' phones started recording. Patricia's smirk wavered. She'd mistaken my calm for weakness. Big mistake. The trail entrance is just past those trees, Patricia said dismissively, pointing toward the dense woods that bordered our neighborhood. I'm sure she's fine. Consider this a lesson in following community guidelines. I had never felt such rage in my life, but finding Emma came first. I'd deal with this woman later. As I sprinted toward the woods, I heard Patricia call after me. And those violations better be fixed by Monday or the fines will double. I never told anyone in Oakwood Heights that I was the Chief Justice of our state Supreme Court. After 15 years as a judge, I wanted a normal life when we moved here 3 months ago. I wanted Emma to have a fresh start, a safe place to grow up. Now I was running into the woods, desperately calling my daughter's name, wondering if she was scared, hurt, or worse. Crunching leaves underfoot. Every snapped twig sounded like her laugh. That laugh used to echo through hospital halls during chemo. Daddy's coming, Em, I whispered, throat raw. The woods blurred. 3 months ago, she'd gripped parallel bars, trembling but determined. Watch me walk. Now, Emma wasn't always in a wheelchair. She was born healthy with bright eyes that lit up the room. But at 18 months old, she developed a rare neurological condition that affected her ability to walk. The doctor said she might walk again someday with therapy and special leg braces, but for now, at 3 years old, she relied on her wheelchair to get around. The past months had been peaceful until today when the HOA president decided my daughter's disability was an inconvenience to her perfect neighborhood. I was working from home that Tuesday afternoon while Sarah took Emma to physical therapy. A sharp knock interrupted my conference call. Standing on my porch was a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing a bright pink blazer and holding a clipboard. I'm Patricia Wilson, HOA president, she announced without a greeting. Your lawn violates 3 separate community guidelines. I looked at our yard confused. The grass was freshly cut, the hedges trimmed. What violations? I asked, stepping outside. Patricia pointed her manicured finger at Emma's swing. Unauthorized play equipment. All outdoor installations must be approved by the committee. Her finger moved to the colorful garden. Unapproved plant varieties. Finally, she gestured to the small ramp we had installed at the side of porch. And that thing is an eyesore. That's a wheelchair ramp for my daughter, I explained calmly. She has a disability. Patricia's expression didn't soften, though her eyes flickered briefly to a small stuffed rabbit propped against the ramp. Rules are rules. You'll need to submit proper paperwork and wait for approval. Until then, these violations must be corrected within 7 days or you'll face daily fines. I took a deep breath. I understand you're doing your job, but the ramp is necessary for my daughter's access to our home. Not my problem, Patricia said, handing me a violation notice. Her heels clicked away, but problems have a way of circling back. By sunset, she'd wish they'd never met. That evening, I explained the situation to Sarah. She suggested we attend the next HOA meeting to request accommodations for Emma's needs. It seemed reasonable enough. The following week, we hired a teenage neighbor to watch Emma while we attended the HOA meeting in the community center. As we entered the crowded room, Patricia was already at the podium reviewing the month's violations. When we raised our hands during the open forum, Patricia acknowledged us with a tight smile. We're here about the violation notice, I began. Our daughter Emma has a mobility disability, and we need to request reasonable accommodations for her wheelchair ramp and adaptive swing. Patricia cut me off. As I already explained, Mr. Evans, the proper procedure is to submit detailed plans and wait for committee approval. But the Fair Housing Act requires, Sarah started. We don't need lectures about laws, Patricia interrupted, her face reddening slightly. This community has standards. If we make exceptions for one person, everyone will want special treatment. Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable but remained silent. The ramp is temporary, I tried to explain, and the swing is specially designed for therapy. Submit the paperwork like everyone else, Patricia said firmly. Next item. As we drove home, Sarah was in tears. How can people be so heartless? It's just bureaucracy, I assured her, though I was starting to wonder if it was something more. I'll submit their paperwork tomorrow. The next day, I filed all the required forms, including a doctor's note explaining Emma's condition. I even attached a copy of the relevant Fair Housing Act provisions, highlighted for clarity. Then we waited. 2 weeks passed with no response. The violation notices continued to arrive, now with added fines. I called Patricia several times, but she never returned my calls. Then came the day that changed everything. It was Saturday morning. Sarah had gone grocery shopping while I worked in the home office. Emma was playing in the living room nearby, coloring in her favorite book. When I stepped out to get coffee, I noticed Emma wasn't there. The front door was slightly ajar. Panic surged through me. Emma couldn't go far in her wheelchair, but she'd never gone outside alone before. Emma, I called, rushing onto the porch. To my relief, I spotted her in the front yard, wheelchair parked on the grass. She was reaching for a butterfly on one of Sarah's flowers. As I walked toward her, a car screeched to a halt in front of our house. Patricia Wilson stepped out, phone in hand, taking pictures. What are you doing? I asked. Documenting continued violations, she said coldly. The garden was supposed to be removed days ago. We submitted the paperwork, I replied. We haven't heard back yet. Patricia ignored me, walking closer to take more photos. Emma, startled by the woman's presence, began to cry. Daddy, who is she? Emma asked, her small voice trembling. It's okay, sweetheart, I assured her, moving toward her wheelchair. Patricia stepped between us. Is this why you want special treatment? She seems fine to me. I felt my temper rising, but kept my voice calm. Please move aside so I can take my daughter inside. You know what your problem is? Patricia said, leaning down toward Emma. Your parents think rules don't apply to them. They think you deserve special treatment. Emma's eyes widened with fear. That's enough, I said firmly. You're frightening my child. You want to know what frightens me? Patricia's voice rose. People who move into nice neighborhoods and immediately try to turn them into something else. If you can't follow simple rules, maybe you should live somewhere else. She turned to Emma again. Your parents are teaching you bad habits. Rules matter. Emma began to sob. I'd never felt such anger in my life. Step away from my daughter now. My voice was quiet, but left no room for argument. Patricia straightened up with a huff. Fine, deal with your crying child. But those violations better be fixed by Monday, or the fines will double. As she walked back to her car, she paused to take more photos of our yard. I knelt beside Emma, trying to comfort her when I heard Patricia's car door slam. Looking up, I saw her driving away, but Emma's wheelchair was gone. I stood up in shock. Patricia had taken Emma's wheelchair. With Emma in my arms, I ran to the end of the driveway, shouting for Patricia to stop. She accelerated around the corner and disappeared. I rushed back inside and called the police, reporting theft. Then I called Sarah, who immediately headed home. While waiting, I held Emma close, assuring her everything would be okay. She clung to me, still frightened by the encounter. Why doesn't that lady like me, Daddy? She asked between hiccuping sobs. It's not about you, sweetheart, I promised. Some people just forget how to be kind. The police arrived within minutes. As I explained what happened, the officers looked increasingly concerned. She took a disabled child's wheelchair, one officer confirmed, writing in his notebook. And she's the HOA president? Yes, I replied. We've been trying to get approval for Emma's accommodations, but she's been blocking us at every turn. The officer's radio crackled. After listening to the message, he turned to me with a strange expression. Sir, we just got a call from Park Services. A wheelchair has been found at the entrance to Oakwood Nature Trail. That's about half a mile from here. My blood ran cold. She dumped my daughter's wheelchair in the woods? The officers exchanged glances. We'll retrieve it right away, sir. By the time Sarah got home, the situation had escalated. News vans were parked on our street. Apparently, someone had witnessed Patricia taking the wheelchair and called not just the police, but also the local news station. An officer returned with Emma's wheelchair. One wheel was bent and the frame scratched. Emma cried when she saw it. My chair is hurt, she whimpered. That was the moment I decided enough was enough. The next morning, I made several calls, first to my office at the Supreme Court, then to the state attorney general, and finally to a colleague who specialized in housing discrimination. By afternoon, things were in motion. Police officers arrived at Patricia's house with a warrant for her arrest on charges of theft, property damage, and violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The news crews captured her shocked face as she was escorted to the police car. Do you know who I am? She kept shouting. I'm the HOA president. What she didn't know was who I was. 3 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was called at the community center. The room was packed, not just with residents, but also with news reporters and even the mayor. As I walked to the front of the room, a hush fell over the crowd. Sarah followed, pushing Emma in her new wheelchair, donated by a local medical supply company that had seen the news. I stood at the podium and looked out at my neighbors, some who had supported Patricia, others who had remained silent out of fear. For those who don't know me, I began. I'm Michael Evans. This is my wife Sarah and our daughter Emma. I paused. What many of you don't know is that before moving here, I served as Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court. The room erupted in whispers. Patricia's husband, sitting in the front row, went pale. I chose not to mention my position when we moved here because I wanted to be treated like any other resident. But when the HOA president stole my disabled daughter's wheelchair and abandoned it in the woods because we planted flowers without approval, I realized this community has a serious leadership problem. I explained how the Attorney General was now investigating the HOA for systematic discrimination, how Patricia faced criminal charges, and how a class action lawsuit was being prepared on behalf of all residents who had been unfairly targeted. But this isn't just about legal consequences, I continued. It's about what kind of community we want to be. Do we want to be known as the neighborhood that terrorizes disabled children, or do we want to be a place where differences are accommodated and everyone can feel at home? The room was silent. Emma has a neurological condition that affects her ability to walk. The swing in our backyard isn't just for fun. It's part of her therapy. The ramp isn't an eyesore. It's her access to our home. The colorful garden isn't a violation. It's something that brings her joy during a difficult time. Many people were nodding now, some wiping away tears. I propose we create a new HOA board, one that understands that rules exist to make community life better, not to give some people power over others. One that recognizes that reasonable accommodations for disabilities aren't special treatment, they're basic human rights. The vote was unanimous. Patricia was removed from the board and a new committee was formed, including Sarah and two other parents of children with disabilities. In the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Neighbors who had never spoken to us stopped by with cards and gifts for Emma. One family built a small, accessible playhouse in their yard and invited Emma over for playdates. Another, a retired carpenter, offered to help design better ramps for our home. The community center created an adaptive playground fund. The garden club started a program to help residents with disabilities maintain beautiful yards that also met their accessibility needs. As for Patricia, her legal troubles were just beginning. The investigation revealed she had been selectively enforcing rules against homeowners she personally disliked while ignoring violations by her friends. She had also been misusing HOA funds for personal expenses. Rather than face a trial, she accepted a plea deal, community service at a center for children with disabilities, mandatory sensitivity training, and restitution to all the homeowners she had unfairly fined. 6 months later, Oakwood Heights had transformed. Our community was featured in a national magazine as a model for inclusive neighborhood policies. Property values didn't drop. They rose as families specifically sought out homes in a community known for its compassion and accessibility. Emma continued her therapy, and by her 4th birthday, she could take a few steps with her leg braces. The whole neighborhood came to her birthday party in our backyard, now featuring an accessible playground that had received proper HOA approval in record time. As I watched Emma playing with her new friends, Sarah sat down beside me. You know, she said quietly, when all this started, I was afraid we'd have to move again, find somewhere else to raise Emma. I nodded. I considered it, but running away wouldn't have changed anything. Patricia would still be in charge, making life difficult for someone else. Instead, you changed the whole community, Sarah said, squeezing my hand. We all did. I corrected her, watching our neighbors chatting and laughing together. It just took someone standing up first. Later that evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked a question that caught me by surprise. Daddy, is the mean lady ever coming back? I smoothed her hair. No, sweetheart. But you know what? She's learning to be kinder now. Emma thought about this seriously. Everyone can learn to be kind, right? That's right, I agreed. Sometimes it takes longer for some people, but everyone can learn. As I turned out her light, Emma called me back. Daddy, I'm glad we didn't move away. I like our home. Looking at my daughter, safe and happy in her bed, surrounded by pictures drawn by neighborhood friends, I felt a deep sense of peace. Me too, Emma, I whispered. Me too. In my years on the bench, I had handed down countless judgments, interpreting laws, and setting precedents. But nothing had taught me more about justice than watching my community transform from a place of rigid rules to one of compassion and inclusion. True justice doesn't wear a robe. It wears leg braces, digs in the dirt for caterpillars, and, when necessary, burns HOAs to the ground to rebuild them better. If you've ever faced a power-tripping HOA, drop a comment below. What happened next rewrote our town's rules, literally.